There we go. Good to see you all. We're in our usual site here. There's no one here by mistake, I think. Hi, Jennifer, just popped in. And Paul, this is our weekly class on the intention, illumination of the intention by Lama Tsong Khapa. We're going to begin with a couple of spoken prayers and say generating bodhicitta, taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, but think of the meaning of that as we recite this, and then we will do it more in a meditative state afterwards. Sangye churang suki chognam la jangchu baru dagni kapsuchi dagi chunyen gi pe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, until I am a Buddha, to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la, jangchu baru dagni kapsuchi, dagi chunyen gi pe sognam ki, drola penche sangye drupa shog. And a short mandala, which in a sense creates, having taken refuge and generated bodhicitta, to create some merit to receive the teachings and to purify negativities, we offer a mandala to the, our primordial gurus. Sajipoki Chukshing Meto Tramri Rab Lingji Nide Genpadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Ulwa Argi Trokunam Dakshingla Chupasho. And then while still holding the mandala, one makes a request often. And here we say, O holy and perfect pure Lama. We can think as our primordial guru, the present Dalai Lama and others, from the clouds of compassion that form within the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. So you can think this is what we are, what we're studying. We're studying the vast or the extensive bodhisattva deeds and the profound meaning of emptiness. So we're requesting the omniscient mind to bless our minds to be able to receive these teachings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, so we have some latecomers. Richard Mintu, haven't seen in a long time. Anna Snehi is here. Okay, so we're going to begin also with a little sitting, calm our mind, prepare for the to not only to settle the junk that's in our mind. Let it sort of we're not in a position yet where we can abandon those thoughts so that they'll never come back again, but we can cause them to subside simply not by not paying attention to them. And so that's one of the reasons for watching the breathing. And then as we go more subtle, we're trying to meditate on the conventional clear light nature of the mind and using that as a stepping stone to generate a motivation of bodhicitta. So sit comfortably. Relax your body and mind. Even relaxing the body is hard enough, but relaxing the mind is a little more difficult. Remind yourself you don't have to worry about anything else. Catch your breathing, that is, in your mind, recognize that you're breathing without controlling it. And once you've recognized it, hold it in mind with the mental factor mindfulness, smriti. That means watching it from moment by moment because it's changing. You can be mindful of something that's changing. Either today or next class will mention that this kind of meditation falls under the close placement of mindfulness on the body, which includes the inhalation and exhalation. So this is one of the great Buddhist meditations. As you're breathing, you may notice your body. Let yourself relax the muscles of your body. Go back to the breathing. If we are adepts, we can usually clear our mind within 21 cycles of respiration. Usually in Sanskrit and Tibetan, it's talking about inhalation and exhalation. We can say breathing. If you're really adept, maybe seven times. So having calmed your mind a little, turn your attention now to your mental consciousness. The mental consciousness, watching the mental consciousness, like a little corner of your mind, watching what's happening in the rest of the mind, noting emotions. You have some residual attachment, anger, sort of confusion, pride, whatever, doubt. Let that go. See those as clouds within a certain spaciousness of the mind. Thoughts of the past, the present, and the future. Okay, memories or plans. That's the past and future. Judgments about the present. Other thoughts that randomly pop into your mind, associations from what's happening. All of this content, like clouds in the spaciousness of your mind, which is likened to clear light, in that it not only illuminates or knows the thoughts, but it is clear in this elemental sense, first of all, that it provides no obstruction to the entry of material into your mind, data, you want to say, memories, plans, emotions, responses, and it offers no resistance to their leaving. Although we don't recognize that, and so we hold on to our anger, our attachment, our unhappiness. We don't need to be unhappy. So letting go of the objective material in your mind, the objective thoughts, you might say. Place your attention instead on the subjective mind, the nature of the subjective mind within which they're arising. You get caught up. What am I looking at? Just there, that thought you see as an objective thought. Turn your back on it and try to perceive the consciousness within which it is arising. And that nature of that consciousness is what's called the conventional clear light nature of the mind, which is synonymous with the conventional Buddha nature, or the developmental Buddha nature. Buddha potential, if you will. This means that we have the potential to eliminate all the faults, develop all the qualities that we lack, or increase those that we do have. The fact that we can recognize this right now is because we're a human being. We're meditating, but not just an ordinary human being. We have this auspicious moment that the Buddha prayed so often, sometimes called a life of leisure and endowment, that we created the dependent arising for, we created the karma for in past lives through much effort, maybe keeping the precepts, trying to be good, wanting to help others. This will not last long, but it has incredible potential use or meaning. When people talk about the meaning of life, it's not the ordinarily accepted American dream of becoming wealthy or powerful, or honing one's body into some ideal. But the meaning, the great potential, is that we can achieve right now a freedom from suffering that we've never had. We can become the epitome of a real human being. We can achieve liberation or even enlightenment with the very auspicious moment that we have right now, this very moment, this very lifetime. We can understand intuitively why we'd want to liberate from cyclic existence, even if there's some hankering that we would miss our favorite ice creams or TV shows or friends. We'd have no more suffering. But to do that alone, to reach liberation for ourselves alone, nirvana, the Buddha explained in some of his Mahayana teachings, he said, those who are intelligent shouldn't be content with my Hinayana teachings, my teachings of the lesser vehicle, which aims only for one's own release. But those who are intelligent and courageous should strive for my Mahayana. Yana means vehicle, the great vehicle that can take us and all sentient beings to the goal, the great goal of enlightenment. Why would we do that? Because all sentient beings are exactly like us in wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. They've all been our mother numberless times. Our friends, our best friends, our companions, our tutors, they've helped us in so many ways, directly and indirectly, even when they've been milkmen and accountants who helped us with our taxes. They've benefited us more often than not. And even those who've been mean to us have hurt us, and directly or indirectly because of their callous minds. They've benefited us in that we have been able to burn up negative karma as a result of that, so that we didn't have to experience it in other realms. Thinking of their plight the same as ours within cyclic existence, having been, so to speak, drowning in this ocean of samsara since beginningless time. When we're up, when things go well, we're content. We don't think to practice the Dharma, then only to experience gross sufferings, even as a human, later as a hell being or an animal or a preta. Again and again and again. All sentient beings are experiencing this in order to lead them out of that perennial suffering into stable, everlasting, blissful happiness. We could teach them the Dharma, but to know their minds, to know their potentials, all of the perfect methods to, without error, lead them quickly out of suffering, wherever they be, we need ourselves to become a Buddha, an expert. So think, I'm going to participate in the class today for that aim. Not simply to accumulate information, but to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, which are the cooperative causes of achieving the body, physical body, form body, and the mental body of a Buddha, along with the learning about the practices that can accumulate that merit and what we meditate on, how to meditate on emptiness. That's the subject matter that's being presented to us by Lama Tsongkhapa. I'm going to participate today in order to become a Buddha, an enlightened being, in order to benefit all sentient beings. This is what's called motivation or causal motivation. It can shape all of the subsequent moments while that initial motivation has propelled us into this listening mode for the next, hour and a half, 2 hours. And bring your attention back to the present. So, good to see you all. Wondering if anyone has a question about the meditation that we do each week, or any Dharma itch that you have not been able to scratch to relieve. Anything in your mind, Mr. Shankar Mitra?
Just a comment. You mentioned about the mind, watching the mind, and the thoughts, the impermanence of the objective mind, right? So it was we don't, well, maybe you do, but I don't think about this normally. But in a recent class with Venerable Rene, we were doing the exact same thing, and he mentioned that the objective mind, of course, is impermanent, empty, and all this other stuff. But what we don't think about is that a subjective mind with which we're looking at it also has the same qualities, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
but you don't think about
the objective mind you're watching is also the subjective mind.
Right. But for beginners like me, when you're watching the thing with this other thing, you think this thing is impermanent, but this thing somehow is permanent, right?
Well, you may not.
You don't think of it as changing. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, right.
Changing.
Right. So
that's all.
We have within us, besides, when we're studying in this class, we talk about the grasping to true existence, grasping to phenomena as being inherently existent. We all recognize that as, that's what we were talking about all the time, as a fault of minds that have kept us within cyclic existence. But we all have what's called permanent grasping also. That is to say, although, anyone that you, any person that you meet of any intelligence will say, oh yeah, I know things are changing, but we still, our mind, when it encounters things before us, it has the tendency of believing, assenting to their appearance as being permanent. Why do they appear to be permanent? Because from moment to moment, although they're changing, what arises is so similar to what was there the moment before, it seems to be static. I look at my little area here, my table in front of me. I have a computer, 2 iPads, microphone. I see out the window in front of me the green trees in my yard. I'm not sure we call it yard, the forest around me. And although, the leaves, sometimes they're moving in the wind or something like that, they appear themselves to, in the same form that they were the moment before. It's only when a big rock maybe cracks suddenly, maybe it's been heated in the sun or something like that, or that was, or when we drop the coffee pot on the floor and it explodes, then we see some gross impermanence. Even that doesn't shake us enough to see the subtle impermanence, but that's one of the goals, of course, to recognize subtle impermanence. So good observation, yeah. Anyone else have a question or observation?
I have a quick question.
Okay, Min too.
Yeah, I have a quick question actually. I was taking a class on tenet at Ling, and we were discussing different schools of philosophy.
Okay, so say just so people know, Ling is our FPMT center in San Francisco, right? All right.
Yes, yes, yeah. So we were discussing the Satantrika Madhyamaka point of view,
Right.
that sort of assume on that phenomena have some sort of inherent of existence of some kind.
Right.
Yeah. So I just think that at some level, to me it seems like a pretty, in some sense, like reasonable proposition. Like let's say that you're a true scientist who try to measure some object out there. So
Right.
your assumption is that these objects must have some sort of intrinsic objectivity, right? They need to exist somewhere out there, and the existence is not dependent on your consciousness observing it. So they are a little bit autonomously different from you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your question? You're just noting that seems to you, as a former MIT student, graduate of MIT, a scientist with scientific mind, that this makes eminent sense, right? This is, why go more than this? This is good. They're not truly existent, but they are inherently existent.
Yeah, but I think that the other, I mean, one is simply reasonable. Two, does it mean that all scientists are Satantrika Madhyamika by nature? They say like everyone is a Satantrika Madhyamika because the tenet of observation requires that we had to agree that that object that we measure has some sort of inherent existence, and then exactly.
So so that's so that itself is a good illustration why the Buddha taught. We can say that the Buddha actually taught these things which were enshrined in the various tenet systems as a skillful means, sometimes talking about phenomena as existing, as though they were truly existing for the Sarvastivada school, the Hinayana schools, or that phenomena were illusions, that like in the Chittamatra school of the Mahayana schools, the Svatantrika going, pretty sophisticated, saying that they're not really existing, truly existing, but somehow they're there, findable, they're inherently existing. So that's an illustration. The fact that seems eminently reasonable to you as as a fellow MIT graduate, that the Buddha was very skillful. So from that perspective, as you study more, say in debate and in your own study, you would come to recognize the faults of that, say through reading Nagarjuna, who elucidated this difference, particularly Chandrakirti's teachings, because the Svatantrika point of view was enshrined by Bhavaviveka in a sense. His interpretation of Nagarjuna, and that's sort of the Svatantrika point of view, but that was severely criticized and debated against by Chandrakirti. So when we enter into the sixth bhumi, when our text goes to the sixth bhumi, also when we enter into the sixth bhumi, you'll see Chandrakirti demolishing that. And so at that time, maybe you're feeling right now out of this eminently reasonable Svatantrika system, you'll see the faults of that. So hang on, hold on,
Okay.
Before. Okay, good. So we're going to continue on. We are at a section here in Jinpa's text, page 144. And in Hopkins' text 220, if I'm not mistaken, particularly the sentence that begins, therefore, just after footnote 268 in Jimba's text, therefore, it is extremely clear that a differentiation between two classes, and then he has in brackets, acquired versus innate, two classes of afflictions, must be made within the afflictions in general, among the afflictions in general, and a twofold distinction needs to be made with regard to the identity view in particular. So that means the view of the transitory collection has an acquired version or intellectually formed version, and an innate version that's more subtle, more difficult to eliminate. And all of the other afflictions have intellectually formed versions. So what does that mean? That means that those delusions are fueled by some kind of intellectually acquired knowledge that you have this lifetime that presupposes you, that causes you to generate those delusions. Those, even without the firing of the intellectually formed afflictions, even without the intellectually acquired knowledge, which is mistaken, you would still have subtler kind of delusions, or maybe it could be quite strong. Also, you get great anger and attachment and so forth, but they could be fueled by something that's existed in your mind since beginningless time. This kind of innate ignorance. Okay, so just to fill in a little on the section before that, when there was Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says the Bodhisattva grounds. This is a couple paragraphs above that. That means the Bodhisattva Bhumi, which is the text written by a Sangha, right? The Bodhisattva grounds, however, reads this in the following way: the fetters that are views are eliminated from the ground of engagement by imagination, because it is there on the ground of engagement by imagination that one first aspires to the suchness of ultimate nature of things. I thought that was worthy to go over again. So there's a little bit complicated wording. Hopkins translates that sentence as a Sangha's Bodhisattva level. He translates Bhumi here as level. Okay, this is on Hopkins, page 219, or 219. A Sangha's Bodhisattva level says the fetters which are views. So remember what the fetters are here. The fetters among the delusions that are abandoned on the path of seeing. Three of them are emphasized because they are a little bit more important in that, if you not wanting to go on the path, going the wrong way, or being indecisive about the path, they're called fetters. So the fetters which are views, so that means that would mean the view of the transitory collection, were abandoned, and Hopkins has in parentheses, in manifest form from the first level of engagement through belief, which means the paths of accumulation and preparation. So Jimpa calls it, what does he call it here? Engagement by imagination. So as I mentioned at the time when we went over that last class, it's in a kind of sense like talking about the generation stage and the and the completion stage. On the paths of accumulation and path of preparation, you are engaging emptiness through belief. You can have realized it. It's not just belief, but you haven't realized it directly. So you're realizing it by means of a mental image. So maybe Chimpa's translation as imagination rather than belief also makes sense. So Asanga's Bodhisattva level says that the fetters which are views were abandoned in manifest form from the level of engagement through belief on the path of accumulation and preparation by, or in other words, because of believing in the suchness that is the nature of phenomena. Okay, so just this kind of the context of what we were talking about. And then a little further on, a paragraph further on, of the innate afflictions relinquished on the path of meditation. This is what we were debating about last time. William was, holding my feet to the fire. Among the afflictions, of the innate afflictions, relinquished or abandoned on the path of meditation. So what does that mean? After the path of seeing, once you've entered into the path of meditation, you begin to have the ability to abandon, so that they'll never return again, the innate afflictions, not just the intellectually formed or the acquired ones were already abandoned on the path of seeing. So of the innate afflictions abandoned on the path of meditation, we say there are 9 levels. They say the great small, the medium small, the small small, the great medium, the medium or whatever is it, middling medium, the small medium, the great small, the medium small, the small small. So what that means is that what you are abandoning successively over 7 grounds, over the, let's say from the 2nd to the 7th ground, what you're abandoning are these 9 levels. So among those, the 3 levels of the great and 3 levels of the medium are correlated with the 2nd to the 7th bodhisattva grounds. Okay, so that still leaves 3 more, that's talking about 6 so far. So that still leaves the great small, the medium small, and the small small. So just remember in perspective, what this means is that you start off with relatively weak antidotes, let's say in the 2nd bhumi, and they're able to get rid of the sort of the gross, the gross delusions. So we start from the what do we say, the big, the medium big, the small big. So that's talking about the delusions. At that point, their antidotes are the small small, the medium small, and the big small antidotes. So they correlate up through there. So where do you get rid of the last 3? So we had debate last time. Paul Hackett very kindly, I was asking him if he had access to a Tibetan text of the Prasangika presentation of the grounds and paths. He finally kindly provided that, which we put up on the Facebook page. I hope that was okay, Paul. So those of you who are interested, you should take a look at that. Jules Levinson translated that. Jules was an old student of Jeffrey's, I think, right? When you were there at University of Virginia, was he there? Was he before you?
He was before me, but then he graduated, I think, in the 2nd year that I was there. after 17 or 18 years as a
Yeah,
PhD student.
he's married. I think he was married to another Buddhist scholar or translator or something like that. At any rate, so that text I was not familiar with, but apparently again, Don Henrik also used it. I don't know if he had attributed it to Jules's translation. If he did, yeah. So we're going to use that as our, because we have generally you don't see clearly in the sutras statements about when these three, from Anna to everyone. Oh, hi, Anna. You don't see clearly where those three are done. So we're going to use his presentation. So generally, just to remind you, whenever you're abandoning the delusions, the afflictions, you're in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, right? At that point, there are two stages of that meditation. There's the stage when your mind has become enabled to abandon them. They are being abandoned. That's called the uninterrupted path. Have you heard that expression before? Stephen's nodding his head. Karen, a little bit this way, uninterrupted path. Let me see. How many people have heard the term uninterrupted path before? Okay, maybe half the class. So what that means is from the initiation of that path, that moment when your mind has become enabled to abandon them, they are being abandoned without interruption. They are being abandoned. And then as a result of that, in the same meditation session, it's not like you get up and do something else. At the moment they have become abandoned, the moment before they were being abandoned, the moment they become abandoned, that's called the liberated path. Some people translate it as the path of deliverance or something like that. Usually we talk about the uninterrupted path. In Tibetan, Barche Melam. Barche usually means like some interruption. You know, you're doing something and the phone rings. That's a barche. That's an interruption. Barche Me means uninterrupted. Lam means path. The uninterrupted path and the liberated path, the Namdrolang, the completely liberated path, they take place in one meditative session. So you could debate about when when you're on the path of preparation, before you've entered into the first bhumi, you haven't realized emptiness directly yet. But in that sitting, when you're on the last level of the path of preparation, the last moments of the path of preparation, it was called the highest mundane dharma level. You're still realizing emptiness by means of a mental image, but that mental image is becoming more and more dispersed through your accumulation of merit and by your meditation on emptiness. You've been realizing emptiness out there. You know it correctly. You have a realization of emptiness, but still it's conceptual. At the moment it becomes non-conceptual, in that meditative session, you enter into the uninterrupted path of seeing. Okay. Suddenly you've gone from the path of preparation to the path of seeing. And when you're in the path of seeing, that first moments are on the uninterrupted path. And while you're still meditating, at the moment, all of the afflictions to be abandoned on the path of seeing, which are the intellectually formed or acquired afflictions, when they are actually abandoned, you are in that same sitting on the liberated path Okay, makes sense? You've heard this before. Richard, have you heard this before? This is old soup to you, right? Reheated pot roast or something like that.
Well, not exactly old soup, but I've heard it before.
Okay, good. So this general sequence goes on all the time. So when you at the end of the first bhumi, you're on the path of seeing now. You're on the first bhumi. At the end of that path, that is to say, when your mind has become enabled through accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom to directly realize emptiness in such a way that it can remove the next set of afflictions, the innate afflictions. You're at the end of the path of seeing, and at the moment your mind becomes enabled to abandon them, they're being abandoned, at that moment you enter into the second bhumi, or you could say you entered into the path of meditation, although the path of meditation includes other bhumis also, right? So you enter into the second bhumi. So when on that uninterrupted path, you are on the second bhumi. The afflictions are being abandoned, the innate afflictions to be abandoned by that second bhumi, which would be which ones? Which afflictions would be abandoned by the second bhumi? Of the 9 levels, Stephen's eager to say.
Thank you, Venerable George. The big of the big.
The big of the big would be abandoned there, right? So at that point, when they're being abandoned, we say pong, you are on the uninterrupted path. And when they are actually abandoned, which is the past tense of pong, 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 when they've been ponged, when they're actually abandoned, you're on the liberated path. Now you're on the second bhumi. And same thing. In subsequent meditations on the second bhumi, many, maybe eons even, you're going into meditative equipoise on emptiness, but it's not yet abandoning the objects to be abandoned by the third bhumi. Not yet. When you get to the point where your mind is enabled to abandon those, at the end of that second bhumi, you sit in meditative equipoise on emptiness, and now you are abandoning, at the moment you are abandoning the objects to be abandoned by the third bhumi. They are being ponged. They're being abandoned. You are on the uninterrupted path of the third bhumi. And when they are actually abandoned, you are on the liberated path and so forth. Okay, so that same sequence goes up. So when we get to the 7th bhumi, let's say between the 6th and the 7th bhumi, on the 6th bhumi, you got to that point, you abandoned what was to be abandoned by the 6th bhumi, and you are on, and therefore you are on the 6th bhumi at the point where your mind becomes empowered to abandon that which is to be abandoned by the 7th bhumi. At that point, you enter into the uninterrupted path of the 7th bhumi, and in that same sitting, the liberated path. So now you're on the 7th bhumi. You've eliminated 6 of the 9 levels of the innate afflictions. So then at the end of the 7th bhumi, there are still 3 levels, the great small, the medium small, and the small levels to be abandoned. So at that point, when you enter into the uninterrupted path that acts as opponents to those 3 together, you have entered into the uninterrupted path of the 8th bhumi. They are being abandoned at that point. And when they are abandoned, you're on the liberated path of the 8th bhumi. Okay, So this is what we were debating about last time, when they were, whether it was on the 7th bhumi they were abandoned, or whether they're on the 8th bhumi. William, are you satisfied with that explanation?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. I think one of them calls this entering the 8th bhumi nirvana. And so I did have a question about that.
Okay, so what that means is that generally, when the Hinayana Arhats have finished their path, I say the Hinayana practitioners, whether they be Shravakas or Pratika Buddhas, they're Aryas, they're meditating on emptiness. When they reach the end of the path of meditation, they're about to become an Arhat. They haven't yet eliminated the small afflictions. They're in meditative equipoise, and once they're being abandoned, they are what is called an enterer into arhatship, and that's called the uninterrupted path. And when they are on the liberated path, when they are actually abandoned, they are abider in the fruit of arhatship, or they're, of the different kinds of aryas. We talk about, remember the different kinds of aryas, the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhat. So there's a approaching to the state of arhat, that's the uninterrupted path, because they're being abandoned, and on the liberated path, they become arhats. So similar to that terminology, so they've achieved nirvana, right? At that point, the Hinayana practitioner who has become an arhat. The bodhisattva, once they've entered into the 8th bhumi, that's like approaching, because what they're doing is they're on the uninterrupted path, abandoning the last afflictions. They're not yet abandoned, they're abandoning them. That's like approaching the fruit of arhatship, in the sense that arhatship is a state in which all of the delusions are abandoned, ceased. And on their liberated path, on the 8th bhumi, the first liberated path of the 8th bhumi, they've become what's called a Mahayana Arhat. So it's not just they've become an Arhat, or it's not just that they've become achieved ordinary nirvana, but it has to be qualified as they've become Mahayana Arhats. They still haven't eliminated the obstructions to omniscience. So within that at the end of the 7th bhumi, they went into meditative equipoise. They entered into the uninterrupted path, upon which they're suddenly in the, you could label them and give them a badge at that point. You're on the 8th bhumi now, and then on when they've achieved the liberated path, they have abandoned all of the 3 levels of the small innate afflictions, and they've become a Mahayana Arhat. They don't get up immediately from that. They're still in meditative equipoise. And when the mind has become empowered then to cease the first of the obstructions to omniscience, right? We call the shedip. They do that on that at the beginning of the 8th bhumi. They begin to abandon those obstructions to omniscience. Before all of the afflictions are abandoned, from Prasangika point of view, you do not abandon any of the obstructions to omniscience. Okay. To some of you, this is old, day-old soup or something, week-old soup. Some of you may be hearing for the first time. Jennifer, is this making sense to you? Are you okay? Kind of. Okay. Okay. KT,
Can I
you,
ask a question about this?
yeah, Sean. Yeah, you got preempted before, so you get to preempt. I was asking KT, but you get go ahead.
So are you saying that the Hinayana Arhats kind of skip, as far as the bodhisattva levels are concerned, they kind of skip the first 7 because they have already done the work that kind of drops them in at the 8th?
No, they're not on Nibumi. Let's say someone who is definite in the Hinayana path. That means they haven't given up the Hinayana path and joined the Mahayana or something like that. They have, from the start, they've entered into the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation of the Hinayana, whether it be the Shravaka or the Pratika Buddha version. They are not on a Mahayana bhumi. They're not equivalent to an 8th level bodhisattva, an 8th bhumi bodhisattva, because the 8th bhumi bodhisattva has accumulated merit for 2 countless great eons. They have understood emptiness with a myriad number of reasonings, more than the Hinayana Arhats need to achieve their nirvana. Their nirvana might take, depends on their karma. It could be 1 life, 2 lives, 3 lives, maybe even the slowest one, 16 lives. But that's nothing compared to a great eon. Those are successive lives. That might be, like a couple hundred years or 1,000 years or something. Whereas the bodhisattva on the 8th bhumi has been meditating, accumulating merit for 2 countless great eons by that time, because they need another countless great eon on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis.
But aren't you saying that the Hinayana practitioners or the Arhats are dropping the same defilements as far as like the big of the big, the small?
Right. That part's the same. So that's
So
why.
how are they doing it so much easier? Why does it take the bodhisattva so long?
Well, because the bodhisattva doesn't take that as their principal object to be abandoned. The principal object to be abandoned by the bodhisattvas are the obstructions to omniscience, which they have to empower their mind through realizing emptiness, like say becoming, like that 8th level bodhisattva that's eliminated all the afflictions. But they had to have generated bodhicitta from the beginning, taking the welfare of all sentient beings into consideration, spreading their attitude toward that, accumulating merit vastly, much more than the Hinayana Arhats do. And so they're content, it's not like they're thinking, oh yeah, you got, you Shravaka over there, he's done it in 3 years, 3 lifetimes, oh man, I should really feel ashamed. It's not like that. Their goal is much greater. Their goal is to achieve enlightenment. And so they continue along that path.
And so when the Buddha awakes one of these Arhats from their nirvana and kind of tells them, hey, there's a whole another path that you've got to continue on, where do they show up? At the first bhumi? Because it seems like they've already eliminated all these defilements that would keep them from.
Okay, so some good homework for you is to read a text that Paul shared with me. I think we just put up the English translation because I don't think anyone here reads Tibetan that well. We have the Tibetan text if you're interested, if you're interested. But Jules Levinson translates that Prasangika Salam. So he talks about the Hinayana Arhats who finish the path. Where do they enter in when the Buddha like just what you're saying, Sean, when the Buddha wakes them up, where do they enter in? At the 8th bhumi? No, they enter in the path of accumulation You might say, well, they've already realized emptiness. Why do they have to start at the beginning? Because the path of accumulation means accumulation of merit. I think Edward Cahn's called it, what did he call it in his translations? Is kind of like accumulating the armor, like an army that's going out to war. Before they leave, they have to get the horses, the armor, what is a helmet, swords, gloves, and everything. And then on the path of preparation, they begin. They're heading into battle, right? They're preparing to directly annihilate the enemy. Maybe they're contemplating the enemy. They see them in the path of preparation, but they haven't yet been able to annihilate them. Then on the path of seeing, you come face to face with the afflictions to be able to annihilate them. So the Hinayana Arhat enters first in the Mahayana path of accumulation. They spent eons in nirvana when they could have been practicing the Mahayana path. Now they have to do that whole path itself for maybe close to 3 countless great eons to accumulate that merit, and they pass through those various paths of the Mahayana. Okay, so next it says, okay, so that was just to bring us up to speed with when the smalls are abandoned. Mintu, I'm sorry, you have a question.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So basically, I think, as I understand, the part of our heart is about cessations, right? It's about the abandonment of desires. So basically, desire for good and for bad, there's no more volition in their mind. So if you become an arhat, it's like you have no more desire of any kind. So if someone had no more desire of any kind, how can they become a Buddha, Because if you want to become a Buddha, you have to have a desire to become a Buddha.
Well, they have desires. They have desires, Mintu. Say, for instance, a Hinayana Arhat who's still alive. They haven't reached what's called parinirvana, right? The nirvana without remainder of the aggregates. They're still alive. And like Shariputra or Mahamoggallana or something like that, they were arhats. There were many arhats around the Buddha while they were alive. Did they not desire tea in the afternoon? Did they not desire to take a walk? Yeah, they had desire. There's a difference between desire and attachment.
I see.
Attachment is a kind of desire which has exaggerated the qualities of something that you might find pleasant, and encapsulating that and wanting to get it, exaggerating that with what is called inappropriate attention. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. If I had that, I'd really be happy. That's attachment. Merely having desire is not attachment. So they do have desire. Snehi, what do you think?
Thank you very much, George. Actually, following up on the whole conversation that Sean raised, and it made me think of, the arhats who have had the same realization of emptiness. And I always get stuck at this point where, if you've truly had that direct realization and there is no self and obviously no other, how can they just not be caring for everyone?
Right. Well, the reason they'd entered into the Hinayana path, what the Buddha called his lesser vehicle, my lesser vehicle, he said, my Hinayana. They're his teachings. He set those teachings out because some people, because of their karma they've accumulated, numberless lifetimes, what seems more important to them is to get out of samsara for themselves. When given the alternative, you can stay around here for 3 countless great eons and work for sentient beings, or get out immediately, so to speak. They'll take immediately. I see, excuse my political, analogies, but it's a little bit like the, powerful rich who don't want to provide provisions for the poor, and let's say in the United States, let's say, maybe in other countries also, probably the same thing, because that would take away from their accumulation of wealth and power and so forth. It is a certain kind of personality that has that inclination. So they want to get it for themselves. It's not to say that those powerful people don't, look at Bill Gates, other people, they do provide charity, but they did it, they got theirs first before most of them got theirs first before they began to engage in generosity and so forth. So that kind of personality set you can see embodied in the world. So you can imagine in the spiritual realm also, when the Buddha, knowing that there are people that have this inclination, he set out the way to achieve liberation really quickly, by strict practice of morality, say becoming a monk and keeping those vows that the Buddha had formulated. And in so doing, you accumulate incredible amount of merit by keeping those vows. And then by meditating on emptiness, meditating on selflessness, through the combination of that accumulation of merit and wisdom, you can, it's not called accumulation of merit and wisdom, but similar to that, you are enabled to realize emptiness directly and achieve nirvana in a short amount of time, relatively short amount of time, just a few lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean,
it's difficult for those individuals, we mentioned before, it's difficult for those individuals if they don't achieve, if they haven't accumulated enough merit and so forth in 3 to 16 lifetimes, they very well give that path up because it's difficult. The austerity of not allowing yourself, let's say sexual encounters and eating whenever and drinking whenever you want, or making money, which inevitably requires you to lie and steal and so forth. So it's very difficult to do that for more than 16 lifetimes. Sorry, I interrupted you, Snehi.
No, I'm so sorry. As you were speaking, I follow that everyone can have different intentions as you start and go along the path. But then if Prasangika is, also asserting that at the path of seeing, everyone has the same realization of emptiness, then I just feel like then everyone should have the same, view and caring for everyone. That's why I kind of just don't follow how then you still have the split between, arhats who go in one direction and bodhisattvas who keep.
Well, that took place way before that. That doesn't take place at the path of seeing.
No, but whatever your intentions were, now you're at the path of seeing, you all have the same direct realization of emptiness. You've all dissolved any sense of self and other. How can you not all now have the same?
Because the Hinayana practitioner has very strong and unattenuated self-cherishing thought. There's a big difference between self-grasping and self-cherishing, right? It sounds like the same. You think on the path of seeing, the Hinayana Arhat would have eliminated self-cherishing because they've eliminated at least the acquired, intellectually formed self-grasping. But they haven't eliminated that at all. in fact, they've enhanced it, their self-cherishing, thinking I must get out of cyclic existence. My famous refrain, the Mahayana attitude is, we gotta get out of this place. Whereas the Hinayana attitude is, I've got to get out of this place. So I'm joking, excuse my, I keep on forgetting who performed that song. Was it
I think it was the Animals, Venerable George.
Animals? Okay, thank you. So they still have, even at the path of seeing, the Hinayana Arhat still has strong self-cherishing. I said unattenuated. It hasn't been reduced. In fact, it may even been increased.
Yeah.
They know that there's not an inherently existent self that's going to achieve enlightenment, but there's still the attitude that would sort of predispose yourself to work for your own goal, and in doing so, that means you neglect the others. So they have great compassion from the Hinayana point of view, Hinayana Arhats. For them, great compassion, the great means compassion for all beings and for all suffering. That's often what we think of. You say, isn't that great compassion? Mahayana, great compassion means you are going to do something about it. You're an activist, or maybe what we say, a progressive or something like that, right? You're going to do something about it. So there's a big difference between what great compassion means in the Hinayana, because it does cover all suffering. They have compassion for all suffering, for all sentient beings. They have an understanding of all levels of suffering. There's a great compassion for all beings, and wishing that sentient beings would be free from all kinds of suffering, but they don't have the attitude to do much about that themselves. From their point of view, those people are up, that's their responsibility, other people's responsibility. Again, excuse my politics, it's a little bit like, certain political parties today say, cut off their, this freebies they're getting, the people, they should work and do it themselves. They should get their own insurance. And so, okay, so enough politics, sorry.
Yeah, but I guess that is the point of my confusion, is because I thought at the path of seeing, when you get rid of even the intellectually acquired self-grasping and you're working towards getting rid of innate self-grasping, and it's the same, then self-cherishing should fall aside, because I thought self-cherishing came after having the attitude of self-grasping.
Self-cherishing is another kind of imprint in the mind. Maybe you could make an analogy. It's not called an obstruction to omniscience, because the bodhisattvas eliminated, during the bhumis. Usually you would think when you enter into the Mahayana path, you might think that you've eliminated self-cherishing. You have not eliminated it at all. You haven't eliminated all of it. You've reduced it very much by developing bodhicitta. When you have bodhicitta, that doesn't mean you no longer have self-cherishing, but most of it is removed. And then along the bhumis, the more subtle potential of self-cherishing is eliminated until you've realized on the 8th bhumi, at that point, it's said that self-cherishing is finally abandoned. So, so it's a different animal. It's an imprint in the mind that is not necessarily diminished by realizing emptiness on the Hinayana path.
Sorry, Venerable George, I missed the last thing you said, that self-cherishing is only fully eliminated on the 8th bhumi?
Right,
Okay.
right. So for instance, in the verse in Lama Chopa, when we had a course here at Shantideva Center, we said, Rangni Chepa Simpe Chongne Di Midu so this bless me to realize that this chronic disease of self-cherishing is the cause of all undesired suffering. You might say all suffering is undesired, but even, suffering also includes contaminated happiness, right? So it's all the undesired suffering. Grant me blessings to destroy this great demon of self-grasping. So in that verse, there's at the beginning, you're saying self-cherishing is the cause of all undesired suffering. Where at the end, it says, grant me blessings to destroy the great demon of self-grasping. Do you remember this? Nadine, do you remember this? I think you read that question. So this is a little bit confusing. So it sounds like by destroying self-grasping, the demon of self-grasping, you'll eliminate this chronic disease of self-cherishing. So what's the idea? When you talk about chronic diseases, in the Buddhist kind of idea, the chronic diseases come about because of some kind of Maric influence that perpetuates them, the demon. So the demon was the self-grasping, which over numberless lifetimes have left this chronic disease of self-cherishing. So you can try to eliminate the disease, with medicine or something like that. But to really eliminate it so that it will never come back, you have to eliminate the self-grasping. Okay, enough of that. It's something to think about, but it's a different animal. And it's a good, if you have doubt about that, go back over the teachings, when we talked about the difference between self-grasping and self-cherishing. Ida, you have an observation or question.
Thank you, Venerable. I have a couple of questions, and let's see if I can phrase them correctly. The 9 levels of afflictions of the desire realm, are they abandoned from the 2nd to the 7th bhumi, or they start at the path of seeing on the 1st bhumi? The 9 levels of afflictions.
Yeah, so those are talking about the innate afflictions. So those are not abandoned on the path of seeing. They start on the 2nd bhumi. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. And I don't understand much about this antidote classification, but is the small of the small antidote the antidote to the great of the great level of afflictions?
Right.
And does this happen at the 1st bhumi? And I don't really understand what the small of the small antidote, the small of the middling antidote.
Okay, so analogy like this is my potato pot analogy several times. So at the beginning, the obstructions are quite big. It's like you at Thanksgiving dinner, you've been responsible to make the mashed potatoes. So you put the potatoes in this big pot, you boil them for a long time. You've taken them out, you mash them, that's done. But the pot, when you're cleaning up the pot, there's all this big gross stuff in there first. That's like the big afflictions. But your antidotes to that, it's like getting your hand in there, taking them out, is like a small version cleaning. Why is it, you might say it's big because it's getting out big things, but it's not capable of getting out the subtle stains. That has to be, you have to get rid of the big ones first with the small level antidotes. And then the medium level things you have to use, your antidotes become stronger then. And then at the end, let's say at the end of the seventh bhumi, your antidotes are quite strong and they're able to get out the small stains from the afflictions in your mind.
So you use the great antidotes for the small.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Right. So that by that time, in the end of the seventh bhumi, your antidote, your accumulation of merit, but particularly your realization of emptiness. Your realization of emptiness now has been empowered by your accumulation of merit and all the other qualities that you have, your ability to remain in meditation and so forth. So it's called a big antidote. Okay. So Shanka, what's your? You have an Asian appropriate hand up there. You didn't choose the
I don't know.
pearly white.
Maybe Adobe, whatever this thing is, Zoom has AI in now, because this is the first time I've seen my skin color hand.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
The other time it's always been some yellowish hand, but anyway.
Okay.
So I posted something from Meditation Emptiness where Jeffrey Hopkins talks about it, but I just wanted to mention this because this came up, and it says in here, the hearer and solitary form destroyers enter the Mahayana path of accumulation. They proceed through the paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, and meditation, and ascend to the bodhisattva grounds, eliminating not the innate afflictions, because those have already been destroyed through the Hinayana path. But they enter it to remove the obstructions to attainment of the many special qualities of the bodhisattvas. They must spend one period of countless eons, blah, 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 in the paths of accumulation, preparation, and so on and so forth, and go through all the 8 grounds. So that's the answer, basically, I guess.
Right, I think that's what we said. So they have to go through those grounds to accumulate merit. And as a result of that, all the other remarkable qualities of the bodhisattvas that on the bhumis that they didn't have before. They had the particular quality of being able to meditate on emptiness, but they didn't have the special qualities that the bodhisattvas accomplished on those paths, say the path of accumulation and preparation, and on the path of and on the bhumis after that. Okay, so let's go on. So then just Nagarjuna's precious garland states, until the 8th ground is attained, there is no annihilation of the seeds of afflictions. I mentioned last time, Jimpa left out the word all. So until you've reached the 8th ground, you haven't eliminated, you haven't abandoned all of the seeds of the afflictions. Upon achieving the 8th bhumi, now you've eliminated, abandoned all of the afflictions as well as their seeds, right? That which can cause them to arise again. So there's no worry that those afflictions will ever arise again. Until grasping a true existence is annihilated, until it's abandoned on the 8th ground, the identity view, the view of the transitory collection, does not come to be abandoned in totality. There's still, until the 8th bhumi, there was still some view of the transitory collection. On the first ground, the 3 binding factors, and on the first ground, the 3 binding factors were eliminated. So at that point, in the last class, I mentioned the verses in the precious garland that verified those statements. So here we are now. Therefore, it is extremely clear, right? Should be clear, all of you. Let me see. Are you all clear on this? That a differentiation between the 2 classes of afflictions, that means the acquired and innate, has to be made within, with regard to afflictions in general, and that same, distinction of acquired and innate also applies to the view of the transitory collection. So that's clear, right? Everyone agree? David, is that clear to you? Okay, good. So now, in this Chandrakirti tradition, which takes grasping at true existence as an affliction, right? So does this is the Chandrakirti tradition. What is this? Is talking about? Let's see here. What is it? So Jeffrey just says in this system. So instead of saying the text doesn't say Chandrakirti tradition, it means Prasangika. So in this system, which takes grasping at true existence as an affliction. Mintu, does the Svatantrika tradition take grasping at true existence as an affliction?
I think so.
Okay, let's see. Now, in this Prasangika tradition, which takes grasping at true existence as an affliction, right? It says true existence, because the Svatantrika does, their aim is to eliminate grasping to true existence, but not necessarily grasping to inherent existence. Their rationale is wrong, because if you have grasping at inherent existence, you will have grasping at true existence. So that's something that will be explained later. So in the Prasangika, which takes grasping at true existence as an affliction, when the afflictions are eliminated by the uncontaminated paths, the seeds of grasping at true existence are necessarily eliminated as well. Here he says invariably. It means they are necessarily eliminated as well. They're abandoned at the same time. However, at this stage, one cannot permanently annihilate. You can't abandon, even in part, the obstructions to omniscience, which he translates here as the habitual propensities for dualistic perceptions. So among the obstructions to omniscience, right, which the Bodhisattva starts to eliminate on the eighth bhumi, Paul, are the habitual propensities, the bakchak for dualistic perception, is that all that has to be eliminated? Is that the entirety of the obstructions to omniscience?
I would think no. Aren't there also the vasana, the stains, because there's two levels. There's the bakchak and there's the vasanas and the anushrayas. I'm drawing a blank. No.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, George.
The obstructions to omniscience include these imprints in the mind that cause dualistic perception. So what does that mean? That's among them, but it's not the only one. What does that mean? That means when the Bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise on emptiness, they perceive only emptiness. There's no appearance. There's no dualistic appearance. Dualistic appearance means the appearance of phenomena which appear to be inherently existent. Nothing appears to them as being inherently existent when they're in that direct meditative equipoise on emptiness, right? When they arise from that, they open their eyes, suddenly the cup of the mug of tea or the bowl of tea is there. They appear to be inherently existent because of these imprints, or what does he call habitual propensities for dualistic perception. Those are not eliminated until the end of the 10th bhumi at all. So there are others, obstructions to omniscience, that are abandoned on the 8th and 9th and beginning of the 10th bhumis. So those include other kinds of subtle obstructions in the mind. Say one of them, for instance, and we'll go into more detail in the sixth bhumi again. One of them is, for instance, the tendency, let's say even arhats who've eliminated all of the afflictions, but have not eliminated the obstructions to omniscience. Of course, they have dualistic appearance, but they'll do things like they'll jump like a monkey, or they'll blurt out something. What is it called now? I can't remember.
You're thinking Tourette's.
Yeah, Tourette's. Yeah, Tourette's. Like, oh, so something will just come out of their mouth. And say, I don't know why I said that. Today, there's medication that is on TV advertised for that kind of thing. But this is much more subtle than that. Of course, these obstructions to omniscience can't be eliminated by that medication on TV. But there are different kinds of things that the arhats might do that are caused by these obstructions to omniscience. Paul, what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think at least the way I think it might be translated in Jules is called the assumption of negative states, something like that. The assumption of bad states, perhaps.
Yes. I can't remember the Tibetan off the top of my head.
Yeah, me either.
This translation.
Yeah, I think the example they give is that it's like when you see a yak and the yak jumps and then you jump. Sort of thing.
I haven't heard that one before, but that's a good example. So Stephen, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Venerable George. So the duality that you're talking about here is the duality between seeing either ultimate truth or conventional truth. That's the duality. And so at the end, once we've removed the obscurations to omniscience, then we can see both of them simultaneously.
So here, dualistic perception means that phenomena appear to be inherently existent. So when you're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, let's say the bodhisattvas from the beginning, from the path of seeing all the way through the 10th bhumis, when they're in meditative equipoise, there's no dualistic appearance. That means that there's no appearance of phenomena seeming to exist from their own side. But when they arise from that meditative equipoise, without choice, phenomena appear to be inherently existent. But by that time, since the path of seeing, they don't believe that, and that's called the illusion-like meditation on emptiness. If they have their wits about them, they realize, oh, isn't this amazing? It looks so real. It's kind of like the practice that you would do in dream yoga. When if you were aware during the dream. William, do you dream? Do you dream at night?
I'm not aware of dreams. In the morning, sometimes if I go back to sleep, I'll have dreams.
Yeah, I told you about my wristwatch. My wristband. I dreamed that it was broken, and so I ordered some new ones from Amazon. I was so convinced. Then when they came and I took off the older one, I said, "It's not broken." So things in dreams seem so real. But if you are practicing dream yoga, Stephen, you can have the state of mind that realizes this is a dream, and the thought can arise, man, this looks so real, but I know it's only a dream. So in the illusion-like meditation on emptiness, it's a similar kind of thing. They say, man, this looks so real, but I know they're empty of inherent existence. I've realized that. So that's much stronger than that. Okay, so let me continue. So however, at this stage, one cannot permanently annihilate, even in part, the habitual propensities for dualistic perception, which are other than these seeds, other than the seeds of the afflictions. There's something more subtle. They're called bhaksha, or vasana, and are taken to be subtle obstructions to knowledge. So since no subtle obstruction to knowledge can be eliminated until all the afflictions are annihilated, the subtle obstructions to knowledge are eliminated during the 3 pure grounds, the 8th to the 10th. So in answer or response again to Snehi and others' questions, why couldn't since the Hinayana Arhat has eliminated all the afflictions, because it says until the afflictions are eliminated, annihilated or abandoned, the subtle obstructions cannot be eliminated. You might think, well, the Arhat should then be able to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience, but that's not enough. It also has to, you also have to have eliminated the self-cherishing thought. It's kind of like the two of them in conjunction, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, along with a mind which has eliminated self-cherishing thought completely. On the 8th bhumi, then the combination of those two are this cleaning agent to get out the subtle obstructions to omniscience. So the Hinayana Arhat doesn't have the elimination of self-cherishing thought. Their self-cherishing thought is still intact. Okay, so then the next verse, because of this, he is at all times also able to destroy all the attachment associated with the desire realm. Or as Jeffrey translates, always he is able to overcome the world's lustful desires as well. So the way that Jimpa translates it, it sounds like he doesn't mention the world. He doesn't mention the world, the word worldly. The Tibetan says, "Dekyang taktu jikten payi ni dupa dochak jumpa nubagyo." He is able to destroy the attachment of desire of the world. That means he's able to help sentient beings in the world overcome their desires. The Bodhisattva abiding on the 3rd ground has become almost like the celestial king Indra, the sovereign among the gods. That means the king of the desire realm gods, right? So figuratively, on the top of Mount Meru, Indra is the big boss. Remember when I talked about when the Buddha achieved enlightenment, Indra and Brahma. So Indra, the king of the desire realm gods, Brahma, the king of the form realm gods, both came to offer the Dharma chakra to the Buddha, requesting him to turn the wheel of Dharma. So Indra has power over the world and sometimes can do good things. He will at all times be able to destroy all the attachment of the world. Here in the commentary, Jimpa has added the words of the world, whereas the words of the world are in that stanza 311 CD, right above that. He will at all times be able to destroy all the attachment of the world of sentient beings associated with the desire realm. As such, he or she will become a chief of beings and will be thus skilled in rescuing other sentient beings from the mires of desire. So it's mainly talking about his ability to do that. As for the conjunctive particle also, what appears in Naxos translation, and he quotes a translation from Naxos. So remember, there are two main translators of the Madhyamaka Vatara Karikas. Naxo Lotsawa. Lotsawa means translator, right? Have you heard that? Like the Rinchen, what's it called? The Rinchen Sangpo Lotsawa training program, the FPMT. Lotsawa means translator, right? So Naxo Lotsawa was one, and the other was Patsam. But in trying to find the verse that's Jimpa gives in the footnote there at the end of his text, footnote number 269, if you go to the end of the text there, he quotes the hypothetical line that he's quoting from Naxos. But that particular line, so I asked Paul's help again because he's the custodian of all these infinite texts he has at his disposal. So I asked him to if he could get Naxos' translation of the Karikas. He sent it to me, but then I noticed in that translation, it wasn't as Jimpa had said it was. And we were both, Paul and I were both scratching our heads for a while until Paul noticed in the colophon of that text, supposedly translated by Natso Lotsoa, that it was amended by Patsap. What was that word? Amended or corrected or something?
Revised and revised, something like that.
Interpolation.
So somehow Jimpa must have access to these old texts that Lama Tsongkhapa.
Isn't it just that that's how Lama Tsongkhapa quotes it? Is that possibly all it is?
Well, Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't quote it. He just says he prefers. Let's say maybe I'm wrong. Let me see. What is the text
I
says?
think he does quote it.
Oh yeah, Dope Dochat Kyangni Taktupong. Right. I'm sorry. So yeah, right. So it wasn't as Jimpa has right. So it wasn't that Jimpa has some supernatural power. Is Lama Tsongkhapa quotes this, and Jimpa surmises that Lama Tsongkhapa had access to this older version before it was, quote, revised by Patsap. Making sense, Jennifer? You're in a blue. You remind me of the Avatar movie right now, sort of like with the blue haze around it. Everything. Are you following? Are you still getting jet lagged? Are you okay?
No, I think I'm okay. I was following all except for the very end because the older was not so, and the later was Patsap.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think I'm not sure they were they contemporary, Paul? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think they were contemporary. I think they're both students of Atisha.
Okay.
And one revised the other.
Right.
Like, both students of Geshe Wangyal and one revising the other.
Yeah, meaning Bob Thurman and Jeffrey Hopkins or something like that. So a little bit like that. So they were more or less contemporary. I'm not sure if one was a little bit older than the other, but Lama Tsongkhapa, throughout this text, Illumination of the Intent, there are many times that he quotes Natso's translation and says he thinks it's better. So what does that mean? That they both were looking at the same Sanskrit. It's just like right now, if you look at the Tibetan, Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of the Tibetan seems to be different than Jimpa's. And my preference often is not invariably, but most of the time I prefer Jeffrey's translation as having been a little bit more, in the meaning. So it's a little bit like that. Okay. So now we get to the next section, the distinctive characteristic of the first three perfections. So, okay, I'm going to really test your knowledge here, David. What are the first three perfections?
Generosity, patience,
Come on.
morality.
Patience. Okay.
I'm sorry, I got them in wrong order, but
Yeah,
I got all three of them.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So the distinctive characteristic of the first three perfections. Now, Chandrakirti presents clearly the distinctive features of the practitioners of the first three perfections, the nature of their collection, and what fruits are achieved. or as Jeffrey says, Chandrakirti now clearly presents the difference between those who are bases of practicing the first three perfections. Jimpa says, the distinctive features of the practitioners. So the word basis, base of, say, for instance, right now, I can have the base, my body can be the basis of, it is a basis rooted in the desire realm, but my mind can elevate to the form realm, right? If you are born in the form realm, your basis is a form realm body. So this is kind of talking the word basis, meaning like that. So the text, the 12th stanza of this third bhumi says, the three practices of generosity and so on. So that means generosity, morality, and patience, as David provided. The Sugata lauded mostly for the householder. They also constitute what is known as the collection of merit, and they are the cause of the Buddha's form body. So one has to know in this context, this stanza is not talking about that the Buddha praised these practices for lay people in general, but for lay bodhisattvas, right? So can you think of a famous lay bodhisattva, Shankar? Or Richard can.
Vimalakirti, right?
Vimalakirti, yeah. Even Manjushri and the other bodhisattvas were afraid to debate with him. He was a lay bodhisattva, but like really, really smart. I don't know what level he was supposedly. It was sort of the Vimalakirti Sutra that some people say, oh, Bob Thurman might be Vimalakirti because he did an early translation of that. Other people say Bob Thurman might be Arya Deva because of missing one eye. And anyway, so this is talking about between lay bodhisattvas like Vimalakirti, who don't have the same vows of the pratimoksha vows as a ordained bodhisattva. This is talking. So here, although both lay and monastic bodhisattvas are practitioners of generosity, morality, and patience, they both practice them, but from the point of view of what was easier and what is more difficult to pursue, the three practices of generosity and so on are said to be easier for the householder bodhisattvas to pursue. So the Sugata, that means the one gone to joy or completely gone, however you want to translate it, is a little bit different than Tathagata, right? It's another epithet of the Buddha. So the Sugata lauded these three mostly for such practitioners. So, let's continue. These three also constitute what is known as a collection of merit from among the twin collections of merit and gnosis. Here we would say, wisdom. This collection is the cause of the Buddha's form body, which is to say, its principal cause. Is that right? Is that what he says here? It is the predominant cause of the Buddha's body, Jeffrey translates, whose nature is form. So I thought that I had mentioned that the substantial cause of the Buddha's body was the subtlemost wind. Is there some contradiction? Don, what do you think? Here it says it's the main cause of the Buddha's form body.
I thought merit was the main cause of the Buddha's form body.
What was?
I thought merit was the main cause of the Buddha's form body.
Right. So it's the main, let's say, cooperative cause. So there's different things. So if you talk about substantial cause, different. Here we're talking different terminology: substantial and cooperative cause. The substantial cause of the Buddha's form body is subtlemost wind. In terms of Tantra, the cooperative cause is a collection of merit. Okay, the substance that becomes the Buddha's form body is the subtlemost wind. So that's called the substantial cause. So, but generally we're not talking about that here. This is talking from the sutra point of view. We're just talking about the main cooperative cause. Here's the main cause. So that is the collection of merit. So in the same way, the collection of wisdom is the main cause of the Buddha's mental body, the Dharmakaya, right? But it's actually the substantial cause of the Buddha's mental body is our present subtlemost mind. That's the substance that will become the Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya. Okay. Karen, following? Okay, good. Shankar, yeah.
I'm not following. So here it says collection. This so form body, the collection of this collection, which is merit and dosa, merit and wisdom, is a principal cause, right? And you said in terms of Tantra, the substantial cause, that is the substance that becomes the Buddha's form body, is the subtle.
Let's read again. So the Sugata lauded these three mostly for such practitioners. These three also constitute what is known as the collection of merit. They're not called the collection of wisdom, right?
Okay, I'm sorry, collection of merit, yes.
From among the twin collections of merit.
Yes, you're right, you're right.
Okay.
Collection of merit. So
Right.
merit, collection of merit is the principal cause, it says here. And you said that in the terms of Tantra, the substantial cause, the substance that becomes the form body, is the subtlemost wind.
Yeah.
And the cooperative cause is the merit.
Yeah. So this is no contradiction, right?
There's sutra and Tantra.
No, it's not talking about just that. It's saying that when you talk about substantial cause, when you talk about causes, you can talk about substantial cause or incidental cause, or let's say cooperative condition, right? Those are two kinds of causes. There are other kinds of causes also. So a substantial cause is something, the substance of which becomes the other thing, like mud or clay. Maybe in India it's mud, but clay is the substantial cause of the vase. The clay becomes that substance of the clay becomes the substance of the vase. And the cooperative causes are the potter and the wheel and the wire or whatever, your hands or whatever, those are cooperative causes, and the fire in the baking and so forth, those are cooperative causes. So when we talk about what's the substance, what's like the clay that becomes the Buddha's vase, the Buddha.
The subtlemost wind, right.
Subtlemost wind, yeah.
Okay,
That's
so then when you say the cooperative cause is the merit, so the cooperative cause in this case is also equivalent to the statement about the principal cause in Jinpa, right?
Well, yeah, it's here.
So that's what I'm trying to say. The cooperative cause to me has a more of a I don't know what the word is, not subservient, a kind of ancillary role to a principal cause, right? Which is what he uses.
Yeah, but that's here, cooperative condition. There can be the main cooperative condition and other kinds of cooperative conditions. So it's like talking apples and oranges. So something for you to think about.
Okay, all right, I will think about it.
Okay.
Just- I don't think Jimpa says principal cause, does he? Oh,
Yeah.
no, yeah, he does. No, you're right.
This, say, these three kinds of what is known as a collection of this collection is the cause of a Buddha's form body. That is its principal cause. So Jeffrey translates that as it is the predominant cause. I didn't put down the Tibetan right here, so I don't know which, if it's saying soul or principle, but it means that that's the most important cooperative cause for the Buddha's body. The substantial cause is the subtlemost wind, but that's
Okay.
not being talked about here. Substantial causes of the Buddha's body or the Buddha's mind are not being talked about in this context. Okay, it's just talking about the cooperative causes. So then Nagarjuna's precious garland states also there, which Jeffrey translates as at that time, meaning when you are king, because this is the precious garland is a letter to a king who was either was a proto-bodhisattva, wanted to become a bodhisattva, or was a bodhisattva. Was he already bodhisattva, Paul? Do you know the king?
I don't remember. So
I think he was a bodhisattva, but he was a lay bodhisattva because he was king, right? He wasn't, I mean, in theory, a king could be a monastic, but he was a lay king. He had a wife, he had children, so he wasn't a monk. So there, or say, at that time you were king, at the time you will be a king. Generosity and morality and the teaching on patience, for forbearance, are taught especially for the laity. Or as Jeffrey says, at that time when you are king, you should internalize firmly the practices of giving, ethics, and patience, which are especially taught for householders, which have an essence of compassion. Okay, so that's not saying in general that these three practices are mainly for lay people, and the other practices of concentration and wisdom are for the monastics. But it's talking about the lay bodhisattvas and the monastic bodhisattvas. Okay. In the context of the three teachings that are easier for lay bodhisattvas to pursue, generosity refers to supplying material needs and fearlessness. Okay. How many different kinds of generosity are there? You know, Nadine, what are the different kinds of generosity? Do you know?
Giving material things, giving fearlessness, and the most precious one is giving Dharma.
Dharma, right? Also in Tantra, we also talk about giving of love. But here in this context, we talk about these three: giving of material, giving of Dharma. So the material mainly is that which is to be given by the laity. And the giving of Dharma is mainly the main giving that the monastics engage in. And the giving of fearlessness or protection is done by both. Here in the context of the three teachings that are easier for lay bodhisattvas to pursue, generosity refers to supplying material needs and fearlessness. So in other words, it says for the laity, it's not as easy for them to give Dharma because they don't spend their time, studying and meditating and so forth to be able to explain it to others. And morality is that of the laity, so their morality is not as strict as the monastic morality, right? The lay morality, the lay vows of pratimoksha lay vows, while patience, forbearance, is primarily the one derived from reflecting resolutely on the Dharma. So when Jeffrey translates, ethics is, he says, and bestow, among the three practices which are easier for the householder bodhisattvas, giving covers the donation of articles, material giving, and bestowal, or the giving, the generosity of non-fright, such as taking bugs out of water, etc. So the kings, or say lay bodhisattvas, in this case, the king can give non-fright by, if someone petitions the king, I'm being threatened with imprisonment, the king can say, you're absolved of that, and so forth. In contrast, diligence, meditative absorption, and wisdom are easier to pursue for the monastic bodhisattvas. However, it is not the case that either of these two, the lay or monastic bodhisattvas, do not possess the other remaining perfections. They all have all of the 6 perfections. The collection of gnosis, right, we call the collection of wisdom, Yeshe Gesok. The collection of gnosis consists of meditation and wisdom, and these two are principally the cause of the Buddha's Dharmakaya. Right, so that's, again, the substantial cause of the Dharmakaya is the subtlemost mind, but the predominant main cooperative cause, or here just because is the main cause, principal cause of the Dharmakaya is the collection of wisdom. Diligence, this is our next bhumi, is a condition for both collections. So without diligence, or technically you could say, a very good translation, I think, is enthusiastic perseverance, because the Tibetan Sundro, when defined, what is the essence of that? It means taking joy in virtue. So that's why many people have translated that as enthusiastic perseverance. Ordinary perseverance, a businessman has great perseverance in making money. That's not the perfection of perseverance. It's taking joy in virtue. It would mean that they would be happy to take the loss and give the victory to others, but ordinary businessmen don't do that. So then, conclusion, stating the qualities of this ground. Boy, maybe we'll finish today. This bodhisattva who abides in the sun radiating light, having first dispelled perfectly the darkness within his own self, wishes keenly to utterly destroy the darkness in other beings. On this ground, though extremely piercing, no heat of anger remains. So that's a little bit enigmatic. Jeffrey translates that as abiding in the sun, which is the bodhisattva, which is the conqueror child. So Jimpa translates, the bodhisattva who abides in the sun radiating light. It is not quite clear. This is the sun here is referring to the bodhisattva, him or herself. So the commentary says, the bodhisattva who abides in the sun radiating light, or Hopkins says, as soon as it is generated, the luminous ground abiding in the sun, what we say, e.g., the bodhisattva, the sun meaning the bodhisattva. So this bodhisattva on the third ground is like a sun, not S-O-N, S-U-N. Having first dispelled perfectly the darkness residing within their own self that obstructs the emergence of this ultimate ground, this third ground, shows this to others and wishes keenly to utterly destroy the darkness in other beings that obstructs their attainment of the third ground. Since the bodhisattva destroys the darkness of faults that undermine the higher qualities, on this ground, they become extremely piercing like the sun. So little commentary necessary here. The word that Jimpa translates as piercing almost sounds like kind of irritating, right? Piercing. Piercing doesn't sound good. The Tibetan word is ngoa. In Sanskrit, it's mahat, which means acute, keen, sharp, clever, shrewd, or large and full. It doesn't necessarily mean, piercing. Acute can mean piercing. It's talking about the intellect, right? So since this bodhisattva destroys the darkness of faults that undermine the higher qualities on this ground, they become extremely, sharp or clever or, wise, whatever you want to say, like the sun that eliminates darkness in oneself and others. That's kind of the implication here. The word piercing seems to be I don't quite see how that's easy to understand. Nevertheless, no heat of anger remains toward defective beings. Defective beings. Jeffrey says, because the bodhisattva on the third ground overcomes the darkness of faults that destroy virtue, they become very sharp like the sun. I wouldn't say sharp is a good one. They become very clever. You say illuminating, sharp, whatever. But he does not get angry with faulty beings. This is because he has become extremely well accustomed to patience, and his continuum has been oiled with compassion, or as Jimpa says, his mental continuum has become well polished by compassion. I think oiled makes more sense to me. If you have, hide, has anyone ever worked with leather? You get the raw leather. You have to work it first, right? That's what I'm told. Has anyone done leather work? No. Oh, I always usually see people. So you have to first you
baseball gloves.
Baseball gloves. There, yeah. What do you do to the baseball glove? You oil it, right? You don't polish it. So leather. You first massage it. You put some oil. You massage that in until it becomes pliable. That's kind of the sense here. Because of his habituation to forbearance, because of his familiarity with patience, he has become supreme, and his mental continuum has become well oiled by compassion. This concludes the exposition of the third ground of the ultimate awakening mind from the text that Lama Tsongkhapa composed, Illuminating the Intent, an exposition of entering the middle way. William.
Is there any practice of meditation in the 10 directions, imagining yourself to be the sun? I mean, the orb.
I'm not quite sure what you mean about the 10 directions. Was it mentioned here about 10 directions, or are you just talking about something else?
I'm just talking about the sun. The sun shines up and down and left and right, and in all the intermediate directions. In other words,
we call it 10 directions.
A body which spreads light in the 10 directions. Is there a meditation associated perhaps with this level, which involves meditation? I mean, there certainly is a thing called meditation in the 10 directions. No?
I don't know what that meditation is. What's that meditation?
Well, for me, it could be this very thing. In other words,
No, I haven't heard of a meditation. If you find reference to it, let me know. Generally, say when you take bodhisattva vows, when Lama Yeshe gave us bodhisattva vows in Bodh Gaya, I think it was the first Dharma celebration. And in the very elaborate ritual, you make prostration to the Buddhas of the 10 directions. So you make, you bow to the east, to the west, the east, south, north, south, east, and west. Then you bow to the intermediate directions, and then you don't bow, but you bow to the zenith and the, what's the opposite of the zenith?
Nadir.
The nadir. So I don't know of another meditation of the 10 directions.
Any direction, any meditation in which you are encompassing all sentient beings, a meditation on love or compassion would be carried out in the 10 directions, because there are sentient beings in all directions.
I get your point, but whether that's categorized in Buddhism as a meditation on the 10 directions, I haven't heard. So if you find reference to it, let me know. So, wow, well, this is good. We have class next week before we take a break after that, and we'll begin the 4th ground next week on the radiant 4th ground, which is talking about this enthusiastic perseverance or diligence or effort or whatever you want to call it. So anyone have some question about today? How are we doing? Anna, we haven't heard from you today. You okay? Everything okay?
Thank you, Venerable George. Thank you for just clarifying everything. And I appreciate everybody's questions because it helped clarify things. I feel like I'm walking away and this was pretty juicy.
Like a nice juicy. Yeah. I think this gives you an idea of the benefit of discussion and debate, because people bring up questions and then you have to, you might not have had that question originally, but when they bring it up, you say, well, I hadn't really thought of that. And in addressing that and clarifying that, you get a better mental image of the whole thing. It's kind of like when you're meditating on the image of the Buddha, you do analysis, from the top to the bottom, and then it becomes clear. They think of it from the side or the back, from the top to the bottom. And so sometimes people bringing up points that you didn't think about before, you were only looking at one side of the issue. Now you have to look at it from another side. So that's very good. So Rochelle, what do you think?
I have a question,
Little, get closer to your microphone or something.
So I have a question that is like related to what we're talking, but not anyway. So when we're talking about generosity and we are mentioning fearlessness, it reminded me of those many instances that we provide to others, either materially or fearlessness. And we forget, or we just are not conscious in the moment to dedicate those merits. So my question here is, can, all those actions that suddenly you remember, oh, I did this, I did that, can even extemporaneously be dedicated?
Yeah, I think what you mean is after the fact.
But way after the fact.
Yeah, definitely. You can remember, when you were a kid and you saved the frog or the bug or something like that, and rejoice in that, and then dedicate that merit. You could, even if usually if you thought of it, if it was something virtuous by nature, you would think, oh, that was good. So you're rejoicing. So that makes that merit greater, and then you can dedicate that in the same way that you can remember when you I don't know, did something naughty to your brother or sister, and you can regret that later and help to purify that, even though it took that was a long time ago. You can recall past deeds, or you can sometimes, you can't recall that you did something in a previous life right now. We don't have that clairvoyance right now, right? I don't know, any of you do. Maybe someone? Doris, do you have that clairvoyance, remembering past lives? No. So, but you can surmise that you did something wrong in the past when some things bad happen to you now. When your things are stolen, you must have stolen in the past, because there's no way to experience an action without having created the cause. So when those things happen to you, you can practice purification, confession. And when good things happen to you, you can rejoice in the virtue that you created in the past. Oh, wow. Someone just sent me some money, or I really didn't deserve this now. I didn't earn it. It must be that I created merit in the past. How wonderful it would be if I, in the future, continue to create merit, to be able to have resources to practice without interruption, to benefit others and so forth. So that's a good point. Okay. So thank you for your attention. We're going to say a couple dedication prayers, and if Mary Ellen is still with us here, if not, where's
Shankar, are you sharing, or I can
yeah,
share?
yeah, maybe Mary Ellen is taking care of Venerable Pamo, who's in hospice, so she may have walked out. So Shankar's going to put up the dedication prayers here. Venerable Pamo is getting near the end of her days. So after teachings. This is before teachings. Okay. So due to these virtues, Gewadi, due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient, all migrators, literally, set them without exception into that enlightened state. In the last line, Dei Sala Khapa Ja Khapa means to set them. It does not so much to lead them. That means it kind of includes leading them. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen yet, may it arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So although that's a prayer, we can use it as a dedication, usually used as a dedication, as a prayer of Maitreya. So in our next class, when we talk about enthusiastic perseverance and we talk about the 37 harmonies of enlightenment, one of them is the 4 abandonings, or the 4 efforts, which this exemplifies, and then the dedication of the, go on, the long life prayer. I think there's one long life prayer here before the quick return, just below that, Shankar. Yeah, we'll go. So for all spiritual friends, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures. It's like the presence of our spiritual friends is that they enable us to see the things that they're right in front of us that we couldn't see before. Eyes viewing all the infinite scriptures. Supreme, you are the supreme gateway for us fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by love. All illuminating friends, please live a long and stable life. And then the prayer comprised by our spiritual friend, the Dalai Lama, for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the conquerors, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas. That means three things: Bodhisattvas, Shravakas, and Pratika Buddhas. Victorious Losang Drakpa, is Lama Tsongkhapa, who are the father to his two spiritual sons, Gyaltsab Je and Kedab Je. Together with your lineage, in the Gelugpa lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding you, Lama Zopa, in holding and spreading Shakyamuni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. So he held the lineage of scriptural understanding so he could explain, and the realizational upholding of the realizational dharma through which he practiced them. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and striving for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. Suddenly, at this, I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, I changed the order here. I think the ocean is sort of more of an adjective of the blessings, the oceanic blessings of the Triratna, the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the great waves of bodhicitta, mind generation of the children of the victorious ones, the bodhisattvas. May the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And then just make your final dedication, all the merits that we've created today, in the past, created numberless lives that are still viable in our mind stream, those that we will create in the future. Dedicate them that we might quickly achieve the state of Buddhahood, enlightenment, where we are like the primordial guru. For others, where we can effortlessly and spontaneously lead sentient beings out of suffering into everlasting happiness. Whatever ways these merits ripen, may they become the cause for continuation of human rebirths up to and including that state. It's a conventional bodhicitta, and then seal that dedication with a meditation on the emptiness of the three spheres. The merits, although we can conceive of them, have a mental image of them, remembering the actions that we did, they are merely imputed. They have no inherent existence. The objects, goals dedicated to enlightenment, so forth, Buddhahood, continuation of human rebirths, realizing the three principles and so forth, all of those cognizable intellectually by means of a mental image, they conventionally exist, but they are empty of inherent existence. They're merely labeled upon those appearances. And the act of dedication, joining these merits with those goals, that itself, that process can't be found anywhere. It's just a name given to that process, connecting this with that. This helps to the sealing of the dedication within the emptiness of the three spheres, helps to seal those merits so they can't be destroyed by anger, wrong view, abandoning the Dharma and so forth. So thank you very much. A prayer, if we will, for Venerable Pamo, who was in our class for quite a while, is now in her last days in the hospice, where Mary Ellen is probably off right now with her in another room. That prayers that these merits also might help that she quickly achieve another human rebirth, meet the perfect Mahayana gurus, and developing the three principles of the path, perhaps even meeting Tantra, quickly achieve enlightenment herself. So thanks for your patience. Tomorrow I have, Monday, I have ophthalmologist appointment, so there'll be no discussion group on Monday, but look forward to seeing you next week at the same time, same station.
Same
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable